Hey YouTube, this is Ben Yessel. How's it going? I'm gonna make a few videos tonight. I'm not entirely sure what. I'm just gonna, I'm feeling maybe a touch emotional, but more angry, I think, than sad. Well, I don't know. It's hard to explain exactly what I'm feeling, but um, I'm gonna save the more positive one after this one. I think it's something having to do with a more recent frustration, but that's not really a big thing. Somehow I got thinking about uh, the way that um, many people just treat people still in life. And I think this is my general train of thought. And, we'll just see where it goes. It goes something like this. If there are many different places in the world, different kinds of cultures, different kinds of people, with different beliefs and different uh, lifestyles and habits and things, and different fears, somewhat. We all have a lot in common, of course. We're all human, but but there's a lot of diversity out there. And one of the things that seems to me that makes the biggest difference in terms of the happiness of different kinds of areas and people, also individuals in particular, as part of these communities, it has to do with the way that people treat each other. You might, I'm a big fan of how the word nice is a very passive term. It is a passive term. And kindness definitely goes a lot farther. But ultimately, these are just words, although kindness means something a bit more. Perhaps words also like uh, empathy, but also more especially, I would say, compassion or long suffering or um, just, I don't know. Then there's a point at which it's an emotional thing rather than a verbal thing. When you're thinking about the things that that are good qualities to develop in oneself more. You get to a point where words kind of stop, and your soul or your spirit kind of takes over from that point. In a way, it reminds you of the way that you ought to treat other people. Now, some people in this world are much further from that train of thought. So without being a self-appointed, minister or whatever, without being high on the pedestal, because believe me, it seems like it. We all make judgments about people, but very few of us know what it actually means to be a true common judge in Israel, which is not something that I don't think anyone wants. But, well, that's a different subject, I suppose. But the thing is that there are people that definitely are further from that whole kind of train of thought. How ought you to treat people? There are many ways to get further from that way of being. And it's for most people, especially in the Western world, it's very slow and subtle how those changes occur. And for a lot of people, um, well, it's, I guess the best way of putting this is that everything we do has you know, we become the things that we do over time, collectively, and we think about. We become that, and sometimes, a lot of times, it's not like, look, if someone has a lot of heartaches and things, or someone has a lot of struggles, that doesn't mean something bad. It just means they're struggling. It's a struggle, right? They're searching, and I don't know. It's just spiritual things and emotional things are hard to quantify. They always have been. It's always hard to, but it's just, it has something to do with it's worse. I think it's worse to feel comfortable feeling scuzzy and sleazy and like you just ripped someone off and that you somehow did a good job for ripping someone off and taking advantage of someone. I'm not thinking about certain kinds of businessmen here, but there's a problem with Alec Baldwin's um, real estate talk with his brass balls. If you guys have seen that very not so family friendly section of that movie he was in, which I haven't seen, about being, I don't know, it's like a Don Draper type, but worse. I don't know. I don't watch Mad Men. But there's a real problem with that. Because no matter how much you make, no matter how successful you are at anything, you're going to lose all of that when you die. You can't take any of that wealth with you. You can leave it with people, but then they're just going to squander it on stuff if they haven't learned how to use money for good purposes, for uplifting purposes. And it's just going to be a chain reaction spiritually that's negative if you haven't taught your kids, how to use money righteously. And so it doesn't matter how much money you make. You can make $100 a year, 1,000, a million, a billion. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter one bit. And this is what a lot of people seem to lose track of, at least in the West, at least in wealthier nations. It does matter that you can survive and that you can have enough to live on. After that, so, I mean, just, it's, there are people far worse, of course, than, less than honest businessmen. But I've known that element. I've also known some really scuzzy guys as well. People that you want to vomit when you heard their conversations or what they've been doing. And of course, it's hard to, there are some folks that are far worse than these kinds of guys anyway. Not just people in jail for, rightfully so, that have, been extremely violent and extremely bad. That's just the more obvious stuff. There are levels of evil, again, that I am only somewhat familiar with, and I don't want to really understand. But there are people that want to make, well, I don't know. I'm just going to stop that train of thought right now. But it's just that, getting back to my original train of thought here, we sometimes lose sight of this element that many people in poorer nations just are able to kind of preserve a bit more for some reason. Maybe it's because they don't think as much about money. And that is simply, how do you treat people? How ought you to treat people? It's really simple. It's really, really simple. It's very, very simple. If you have a lot in your emotional bank account, if you have some friends that are helping you feel happy in life, and your family is helping you feel happy, and you got a lot of great things going on, you're going to have a lot in that emotional bank account. And so it's going to be a little easier for you to build other people up. And that's a good thing. That's the kind of life that many of us want to have. Or I think all of us want to have, really, on some level. And it's a very healthy way of living. It's going to help you not only live longer, but you're going to be happier being that way. So if you have only a middling amount in your emotional bank account, you guys will know where you're at here. Middling areas, maybe it's harder for you to build other people up, but it's not impossible, or it's not especially difficult. Now, psychologists might understand what I'm talking about here with the emotional thing, but there's always that kind of middle ground between psychology and the spiritual arena. So I don't know. I know they often are very hard to separate, but I don't know if they should really, in a way, but separate the two. But the thing is that if you're middle somewhere, you can still, be a force for good. You can still do what you can to help others feel happy and good, and you might not feel as great as that person who's much fuller, but the Lord understands. God understands you, and God understands things that I certainly don't about you. And at some point in the future, whether it's in this life or the next life, that emotional bank account, that you will be much fuller. You will be much happier. Your life will only get better as you try to do what you can with the joy whatever joy you feel in your life and about other people. Which is a lot more than I could say for people that seem like they think they're being successful because they're whatever, You're only satisfied. You're only happy and successful in a way if you aren't a scumbag, and if you're only happy and successful if you're honest with people in your dealings, and you treat people well, and there's a limit to, I think, in the business world, to which there's a limit to which I think you can get a good deal and feel good about it if the other person also feels like they got a good deal too. If you rip someone off and they didn't know about it, or it's something where it's something very dishonest, you might feel like you could live with yourself for being clever, but that's the kind of thing that will attack your sense of peace and well-being in the long run, amongst many other things that are wrong to do. And if a person continues to be that way, take advantage of people for whatever reason, it's not going to be healthy. It's not spiritually healthy. It's incompatible. It's not compatible with happiness. It is. There are some things that are contrary to the nature of happiness, and taking advantage of people is one of those things. And so there are many people that have been taken advantage of in many different aspects. I was just watching a video The guy was talking about this. Now, the guy I was watching was a little bit more vulgar about what he was saying, but what he was essentially saying was that he's been taken advantage of, and he feels like many other people have been taken advantage of. I didn't watch the whole thing, but he was obviously very emotional, upset about it, and I didn't have to watch the whole thing. I wanted to do my own videos, whatever. But it's just we live in a world right now where people really are getting much more cruel and cold-hearted and just bad, evil, really. And they don't think they are that way. They think they're just fine. And the crazy thing is that they've lost a sense of they've lost the sense of connection they have with other people because they don't think it's such a bad thing to take advantage of someone or to be unkind to someone. It's a scary thing. Someone might say, "Oh, let's see. There's 10 commandments, right? Thou shalt not murder." The higher law being, "Thou shalt not be, angry with thy brother." That's the thing, right? I don't. These higher laws are always harder to live, but they're not. They are worth, considering. So we're definitely not talking about these commandments like George Carlin would talk about them. We're talking about these commandments like they were actually intended. All respect to George Carlin. He had some good points, etc. I know. Okay. So we know about murder. It's wrong. We know about stealing. It's also wrong. We know about cheating. It's wrong. We know about not committing adultery. That's also wrong. And yes, I understand sex is a sensitive subject. No, I won't get into it right now. But I think we know how we're supposed to be conducting our lives. Just put it that way. Okay. That being said, so we know it's wrong to covet. We should be grateful for what we have. We know it's wrong to swear, but it's not, I don't know, as big of a deal as many of these other things. But we can be a lot more pleasant to people if we don't swear. So that's a good thing. I tend to be pretty patient with people, I think, that swear. I understand it's not a big deal. I know people that swear probably want to kick the habit as well. Okay, if they could. Maybe not always, but. So then we also have things like honor your father and mother and keep the Sabbath day holy. Well, if your mom and dad are scumbags, I understand. But if they are nice people, you should at least honor them, right? I mean, I understand that's on some level, it's a deep subject. I know. It just depends on the situation, I suppose. But anyway, I'll leave that in God's hands. But honoring the Sabbath day seems a little hokey for a lot of people. I think that kind of commandment would mean more and matter more for, depending on the person, once it just, it's one of those things where it will matter more to someone when they just are at a point where they can understand it better. Kind of spiritual respect. Anyway, so what else am I forgetting about here? Don't lie, right? Don't. Let's bear false witness, that kind of thing. I suppose not blaspheming is similar to not swearing, whatever. I guess that's another. I'm not putting these in any particular order. And of course, there's some others that kind of get in there, like don't have any gods before me, and there's the higher law that Jesus talked about loving God, loving others. And if I've forgotten any of these, I just need to review them. I think I'm pretty much sure I covered all the main points here. So there's a real danger in forgetting about, especially the things that Jesus talked about. For all you Christians out there, etc., etc. There's a real danger in forgetting that we're all brothers and sisters. And we all ought to treat each other with kindness and understanding. So when someone who owns a business treats his employees in an unchrist-like way. To whatever extent he does that, he's exercising, we call it unrighteous dominion. I do want to get into this a little bit. Unrighteous dominion is when a person has any kind of influence or authority, earthly authority, whether it's legal or whether it's occupational or educational or a parent or a church minister or something, any kind of seniority over someone else of any sort. Unrighteous dominion is when that kind of person, for the gratification of that person's ego, pride, financial well-being, whatever, takes advantage of their employees, steals from them, abuses them emotionally, and in other respects. It all depends, I don't know. That is unrighteous dominion. Taking advantage of people that are that you have seniority over, in some respect. That's pretty heavy. When an employee, this is why we have unions, but unions become corrupted very sometimes as well. You know, that's another subject as well. But this is why a lot of people are working for themselves. They don't have to deal with that person. The problem with having a 9-to-5 job, even if it's what you went to college for, even if it's something you want, the problem is when you have someone who is your boss, who is exercising unrighteous dominion to a degree that it becomes intolerable. So you look for a different job because it's just a question of how okay are you with that? And some people seem to think that it's somehow admirable to just stick with a job. And it might, maybe, but no. Because remember, we only have one life, folks. And whose life are you living if you think that it's bad to quit a job because you have a bad boss? Right? Yeah, I know. It's always hard to make these big decisions. I'm going to get back to another train of thought because I'm branching off into some other stuff here, but it's wrong to lose sight of the fact that we are all brothers and sisters here. It doesn't matter how much you earn. It doesn't. After you're dead, this is what you're going to have with you, in my opinion. Because let's just face it, a lot of people are petrified of death because sometimes you just don't know, right? It's just, but based on just my faith and what I think is going to happen in afterlife, you're going to have your character. It's all the habits you formed in this life, all the thoughts, the thoughts that you tend to have over and over again, right? Your character. You're going to have your knowledge. Character means a lot of things. It covers the bases. All the things that you've done that are good, and all the things you've done that are not good, that you haven't repented of. Your character. It's gonna go with you to the next life. That's just the way it goes. You're gonna have your intelligence, all the skills you've developed, all the knowledge that you've accumulated. And that's it. You're not going to have any possessions. You're not going to have any money. I don't know. Yes, your guess is as good as mine regarding what you're going to be wearing. I'm assuming that we're not going to be naked, but because our bodies are separated from our spirits, whatever existence we are going to be living, it's going to be different, right? If you guys have ever seen a spirit or ghost, I'm assuming there's probably robes of some sort, but they're not earthly robes. I don't know. I wouldn't, I don't know everything. I just know I have faith, right? It's a faith thing. But the thing is that when you look at when you consider these kinds of topics and things, it puts a lot of things in perspective. So getting back to Alec Baldwin playing that real estate guy. So you get fired from a real estate job because you just can't convince people to buy this house. Okay. Is it the only job that's out there for you? No, right? Maybe you can start your own company. I don't think losing a job matters really that much, so long as you pursue something else. As long as you always pursue something else, you're in great shape. If you lose a job that's more related to what you went to college for, that you care a lot more about, there is still a way you can do something else. Employment is like that. Employment is not... It matters that you earn money so that you can survive and can feed your family and all this stuff. That obviously matters. It doesn't matter if you lose a job that you have worked hard, very, very hard doing. That doesn't matter. I used to stress so much about resumes and things like that. It doesn't matter. Not getting a job that you really wanted because something is wrong with your resume, it almost seems a little bit weird now. You get jobs because you're the best person for that job. If the person that's hiring you has half a brain, and the more desirable the job, the more you might take either advanced degrees or more skills to get it, higher skill level, whatever it is. The person hiring you should know what the devil they're doing. In that, I would think they would. I certainly know that, people are listening to professional musicians auditioning for an orchestra position. Goodness sakes, man! If they aren't musicians themselves, that would be that would be unthinkable, right? It'd be unthinkable. It's ridiculous. It makes some of the cleverest CEOs, some of those skillful businessmen look like complete idiots. Just how skilled some of these musicians really are, in my opinion. Utter idiots. I'm actually talking about Donald Trump here. Trump thinks he's a great businessman. He's not. He's not. He's not. In so many respects, he is laughable. All right, I'm it could be something scientific. It could be it's all these fields. I don't know, but when you when you don't get the job you want, there's other jobs that will come up that you can get. It might be a little tough sometimes, depending on someone's situation, not having a job for a bit. I don't know. But there are things that are more important than this arena of life still. And one of those things has to do with character, how we treat people. And getting to my original train of thought again. Some folks, it seems like, I'm not just talking about Africa or Latin America or whatever, but some folks that seem to be not as well-to-do sometimes seem to grasp this topic a little easier, I think. They seem to know, and many people that have more money understand this too. It all depends. It's like when you lose to whatever extent you think, whatever extent this is going on, when you lose humanity, when you lose compassion and understanding, even, and a sense of that everybody's in the same playing field, when you lose these things, these outlooks on people, when you see people as consumers, as annoyances, as something not so nice, something negative, that is a real spiritual danger, in my opinion. That's bad. It can be just as bad as certain other areas of, flaws of character. We often think drug use is really bad. Funny thing about drug use and alcoholism and all that stuff is that it's bad because of the effect it has on someone's body and mind. But the actual act of doing that stuff isn't really, in my opinion, what's wrong with it. It's what happens to your body when you do take in that stuff. And then it's also more especially what other things it can lead to. We don't always know what things we do that may be wrong might lead to in the future regarding other things that we could do that are wrong. But I don't want to get too much into all this kind of stuff. I still want to focus more on things like humility and kindness. But I think I've made my point in this particular video. And there is a gentleman I'll be talking to who's curious about me visiting a company I used to work for. And when I talk to him, I know what I'm going to say. And, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. But I hope you guys are not taken advantage of by your employers. I hope you guys are treating other people well. If you have not very much in your emotional bank account, whatever it is, I know it's harder to be kind to people. I think it's just that the Lord understands the struggles that we have and the little, even if it's just the little things we do that